have one more public comment, one more public presentation before we end this afternoon. For this segment, which is aligning priorities to capacity and workload, the first thing I'd like us to do is on the staff recommendations, which are on the bottom of your agenda, if we could move down to item number 6. So we checked off items number 4 and 5, and we will come back to the budget items 1, 2, and 3 before we break today. Item number 6, develop work plan. And so again, these are staff recommendations and asking council to authorize the city manager to be able to develop work plans, including resources, to initiate services mentioned in this report and the report that you got, but also, which also covers all of yesterday and this morning, that cure the absence of risk in core administrative support for public services. The CRM we've been talking about, these are not new items. The CRM we've been talking about, risk manager, the auditor functions, all of those. So one of the ways of encapsulating and combining all of that we've talked about are on these 2 slides, which are the 2 slides right after the priority slides, the work plan slides. So there's nothing new here, but it does summarize a lot of the, as the wording here says, the absence of these strategic services are not present in the organization. And so by authorizing the city manager on item number 6, these would be some of these work plan items that she would be developing. So let's just walk through those and make sure you're okay with these. The climate action plan and resources, which the city manager talked about just recently. You would say something more about that?
I do. I mentioned earlier the ongoing appropriation of $25,000, and likely, you know, we really do need a committed resource to pull the different efforts together. There is a one-time allocation that has not been expended because of the absence of having someone to really move a project forward. So lots of focus on it, but the desired resources are needed in order to really take it to where the council has articulated it would want to go on this item.
The citywide risk management function that we've talked about?
We talked about that, and the city attorney and I will be highlighting, unfortunately in closed session over the next couple of sessions, some areas that are important that we need to move on and that surface the value of having risk management. And we are anxious to put some sort of resource, at least the beginning, so that we start to move in that direction.
Real estate asset management and database.
This is an area that is important because it goes hand in hand with economic development. Just knowing where our asset management, our assets are and how we're managing them. But I need to be clear with the council around staff assignments. And while I mentioned it earlier today that we have an economic development function, the staff is largely assigned to other collateral duties like the convention center. The particular staff person is probably one of our most expert real estate transaction person who can help us with navigating through complex real estate transactions. And staff that supports her is assigned to the Cultural Commission almost full time. So it leaves very little time to do proactive work on economic development in the manner that I talked about it earlier. I still think it's needed, and I'd like to see how I can build capacity, acknowledging that real estate asset management and functions still need to occur, but also economic development.
Excellent. And then intergovernmental relations function, we talked a little bit about that.
On the last
oh, please, yes.
Yeah. Because you're talking, the real estate asset management and database and property management is this particular skill set,
right,
that that requires a very specialized sort of focus. And I know that the city owns a lot of property. The city has a lot of contracts, and I always imagined that a person that would be responsible for this would be almost a full-time job, considering the amount of assets we have and the management and including the larger contracts like, of course, there's the stadium, but City Place and the ground leases that we have and the contracts to make sure that they're managed. It's a very difficult and time-consuming and specialized skill set just for that. So I didn't know if you were thinking about that in terms of
I agree.
Part-time here or there for certain people isn't going to really work.
No, it's not. And in fact, that's how it's being done. And I completely agree. And Manuel, as my previous public works director, knows in Sunnyvale that it was absent, and we actually dedicated a full-time position and got it created, and wondered how we ever lived without it by the time this person came in who was expert in this arena and served that a smaller city by way of city that it owns very well, and was helped get organized. And the same is needed here in this manner. But I speak to it in that we often look to Assistant City Manager Ruth Shikata as someone who helps us navigate through these real estate transactions or real estate documents. And each time those collateral duties keep layering on, it does take away from core work of economic development focus. And so I just wanted to raise that as I need to be clear about staff assignments and how we're using our resources, so that when there is an expectation that there is a function happening in the organization, I tell you what other items this person is responsible for and why it may not be happening at the scale that we want it to occur.
Excellent. And on to the intergovernmental relations, we talked about it briefly, but I know Councilmember Davis raised that issue in response to the PD presentation this morning.
I just want to start with the basics. As I mentioned, there are about 3 laws that we were delayed in implementing or getting to, or missed some windows of opportunity. And I think it's important that we look at creating focus on laws that we have to implement or mandates that have to be implemented, so that we understand more quickly what service impacts may exist, or what areas of change we need to drive to be compliant with laws as they come into place. Any growth from there is just a cherry on top.
Talked quite a bit about the audit function and the management reviews, separate from what happens in the clerk's office, as Rod talked about that yesterday. So I think we're good there.
I am in an environment of multi-years of projected deficit, I am very interested in management reviews and understanding where there's efficiencies within the organization, where our hotspots are. We've already surfaced some for the council, but this is just a 3-month window. There's likely more areas that we'll want to look at. And I have spent the last week saying, you know, we've got to find a way to at least get 3 people certified in understanding auditing, so that we work with that in mind as we look at performance management and continuous improvement. Likely those types of efforts can be absorbed in our existing budget, but it is important for us to begin to stabilize a citywide performance auditing program.
And then the dedicated communications function and plan that we talked about earlier in terms of the not really having a full-time PIO here, and whether or not that's something to explore, to pursue. There's 6 more. Decentralized procurement, been a major source of conversation over the last couple days. Capital projects, and all of those capital projects that we talked about.
Yeah, this hasn't really surfaced in the way that I'll speak to it today or now. Is I am always amazed by Jim's ability to offer services for Parks and Rec and think about the programs and the offerings that we provide for our community, and then put another hat on and be our capital projects Parks and Rec manager. And that's a really big scope for individuals to carry, just like a lot of our public service workers are offering direct services while at the same time procuring services. And those are very 2 different areas of expertise. And I think as we look at doing assessments in either our facilities or our parks and that whole portfolio, I think we need to help Jim out with subject matter experts that really help us accelerate the completion of these documents and where our funding gaps may be.
Great. And please, council, jump in if you have any questions or comments.
Jim put his thumbs up.
Floor's
He
up.
agrees. He didn't
Yeah.
know that
We've
was
got
coming.
approval from the Parks and Rec director for
good.
that one.
We can go home.
We need Jim more focused on the programs and the services and the creation of. Of course, he provides input on the engineering of the capital projects behind it, but we need to help in that manner, because there's a lot of force and influence and pressures in that area.
And then the contracts database and management, a streamline, efficiency.
This is an area that has incredible opportunity for efficiencies, both by way of how we process our contracts, but also how we procure strategically going forward and leverage the public funds that we have. I am embarrassed, I guess is a word to say, to tell you that if I even wanted to try to strategically procure a service, I wouldn't even be able to say we have this many contracts in place, this is how we might procure it differently, because we are so manual in our process that we're not able to query a system that yields these are the inventory of contracts that we need to look at. And in other organizations where there are contract databases you can query, I'll go back to trees, and those contracts should be able to come up and you can look strategically what your strategy may be for going out to market. We can't do that because we're manually processing these documents, and I can't understand the scale of efficiency or opportunity here until we first get ourselves into a database management program that helps us manage those contracts.
Right. And the more robust prevailing wage and minimum wage compliance. So I don't think we've talked about that one.
No, but these have been examples that we've used as where we receive policy from the council or a state mandate. For instance, minimum wage was a council policy and the prevailing wage is a state mandate. And we are obviously duty bound to implement them, but we never resource them in a way where we can uphold either state mandates or laws or ordinances and laws passed by the council. And so I say this because they are very important to our workers in the community. They are very significant policies that help with the cycle around affordability, cost of living, and quality of life. And we it ties intergovernmental relations with prevailing wage. It ties all of the areas of contracts, and they're just great examples of where our implementation fell short, and we are now correcting those processes and trainings.
Great. And the training and certifications enterprise-wide.
This is just my desire for our very talented and committed staff to always, for lack of a better term, to always keep its knives sharp in skills and training and certificates and building towards understanding at point in time where are we with any certifications that we need to deliver services, and what are the skills that our staff need in order to maintain their skill sets to deliver efficient services. It's an area that we've already talked about throughout the last 2 days.
Very good. And then the last one, which has been an overarching theme, is citywide focus process improvements, function and teaming, having to do with streamlining, having to do with improving and enhancing your administrative processes there. So let me just check in with council on item number 6 on staff recommendations to authorize the city manager to develop work plan around these items here. Is that okay with council? For her to go forward with that. As we move on to item number 7, a similar item to direct staff to bring forward to council actions that are administrative in nature and in building staff capacity, streamlining administrative processes, efficient use of resources, lower cost of providing services. So as I'm hearing that staff recommendation, there will be new opportunities to, in addition to what's on the list here, to make these process improvements, and you're authorizing the city manager to be on the lookout for those and to take action when those opportunities present themselves. Is that okay with council moving forward? Excellent, very good. Great. So we're making great progress. Did you have some comments?
I did.
Overarching? Yeah.
I did. We are starting to wrap up, and I just want to express to the council how delighted I am that we were able to bring the under the hood review of the organization. And I worried that in some cases it may become a defensive conversation, because we are asking for your guidance and your policy support and your governance support in pacing the organization, allowing for us to share some of our areas of weakness, as well as some of the areas where we really want to excel and move forward on. And it is incredible that we are able to bring this information to you in a manner that is productive and that allows for us to embrace it collectively so that we move the organization forward. And so I have to say that because you have not been defensive in any manner as we've brought forward areas where we can do better and where we are not proud of some of the service level or qualities. One of our public speakers raised the issue of a work plan and what we've done over the last 12 months. And I want to surface in your packet, there is the matrix. And just this matrix came to life within the past 6 weeks. Prior to that, there was no working document where we could track the council direction on these pillars and provide a work plan and what our estimated timeframes were for key milestones. This will be a document where when we have other initiatives that come up, we'll continue to keep this updated, but also we'll use it to have the trade-off conversations, because we already know our limited resources, both by way of staff capacity as well as our fiscal condition. And the only way that we're going to begin to turn this corner is on net neutral changes, new revenue opportunities, or trade-offs from the list of what we may push back or what we accelerate because of strategic opportunities. I want to do better on sharing with you the impacts of these work plans on staff capacity, and work with the council as we bring forward these strategic service improvements where there may be a need to reduce workload, pace the organization, and just work with council on unbundling these items where they've just become, key sources or key pressure points within this organization. It feels like there's room for that conversation. It feels as if you've been receptive to the information, and I'm excited to launch this for the year because I feel we can get the city on a good track.
Great. Excellent. Any council comments at this point? Councilmember O'Neill?
Thank you. So, yeah, I think we're on the right track. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff. I mean, previously we did have a spreadsheet, but it really was an extremely detailed, almost like more of like, you know, tasks that were being done in individual departments. And sometimes I think, you know, how from that very tactical level, how that flowed back up into how did it coalesce around larger goals wasn't very clear. And, you know, so my only, you know, a little bit of concern is that, and I'm sure, you know, you'll be working on this, but, you know, for the community and for us to know that there's still, these are, a lot of these are very resource intensive. And we have a lot that, you know, like, you know, we've got a lot of things in progress and we don't really have necessarily completion dates or whatever. But once again, kind of almost doing, you know, the PERT charting about where are the, since we've been doing a lot of Gantt charting of, you know, knowing where you've got dependencies and if there's, you know, 3 projects going on and, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, Ruth needs to be put in her piece, but she's already working on 5, you know, and then how does that throw off everything else, you know? So I'm assuming and guessing that maybe there's going to be that kind of analysis, you know, like of who all is going to be needed to execute these things and where are those critical points where the resource constraints may pull a bunch of things off to the side for a while. And, you know, so that's something that I'll be looking for, and I'm sure, you know, I'm sure you're all very experienced with doing that. But I think that because I think in the past we have almost like, you know, we had so much food in our mouth, no one could even chew anything. In terms of being able then to making sure so that people can see that we do have things that are actually getting across the finish line and being completed, and, you know, able to, you know, leverage from that or just free up resources to go on to the next item.
I think that's important, and what is also important is this is a goal setting and a strategic session, and oftentimes, I was having the conversation with Shawn earlier, strategies don't, in public service, where, such as land use or other types of implementation of items, they don't occur from January through December. Often they're multi-year, they're multi-phase, and it's an opportunity to provide updates on where we're at with some of the multi-phase strategic items, but also accomplish some of the lower level tasks that are more on a shorter term. I can share with you, it's a public document, but it would be an ideal place to reach with the city council. And that's what we would do in the city of Sunnyvale, where as new initiatives were to come forward on an annual basis, we would accompany a staff assessment of where we were at. And they, you know, Sunnyvale is on another extreme in terms of using these work plans and reports, but we were allowed to bring forward, for instance, our planning department, it was running 7 FTE vacancies. What is the impact to that, right? And what's our ETA? So we would, in Sunnyvale, we did work in that manner where we would match the staff resources and the interrelationships of getting projects done. But I recognize that we are starting to get ourselves organized and things need to take a little bit more time to evolve in that place.
Thank you.
Excellent. Other comments, reactions? Here, yes, Mary Gilmer.
Thank you. I think that the demands on the council and the city staff is certainly increasing and not decreasing. And the more open and transparent and accessible our city government becomes, the more our workload increases. And that's just what we've seen in the last couple of years. And I can see that the next 2 years are going to be extremely important for us to focus on our fiscal management here in the city, where we are, how we can improve going from a paper to a paperless government, and how we can better provide services to the public. Mm-hmm. And that's the basic, I guess, baseline for me, that we have to get to that point.
Right.
Once we do get to that point, we're going to see a lot of savings in terms of duplicating efforts, right, and, you know, too much staff in certain cases, too little in other. We're just going to become more efficient.
Yeah.
We're never going to be perfect because it's government, right? Yeah. So we're never going to be perfect, but we're going to do better than we ever thought possible. I think I'm feeling very positive after this. So we're going to do the best we can so that we can be, as lean and mean as we can and deliver, wonderful services to a community that deserves it. In the meantime, we have to be, I believe we need to be a little bit measured on how much we keep throwing on our staff.
Okay.
As much as we want to do all kinds of things, because we are a really engaged council.
Right.
We really are, and we have a really engaged community, and we have so many things we want to do. We dream about the things we want to do here in this city. And, well, some of us. Anyways, so it sounds like there might need to be a little bit of time for the staff to get settled in for what we're doing. And we appreciate you letting us look under the hood for what you do on a day-to-day basis to tell us the good with the not so good. And I think this is something that we needed to be scared straight into reality a little bit as to where we are, so that we know how we can manage where we go in the future. So I'm happy we're doing it, and I've heard loud and clear as to what's going on, and I think we need to respect that, but also know that we have major obligations to our public to provide those great services. So I'm hearing that, and I want you to be able, the staff to be able to do what they need to do to get us to that point. It sounds like we're on the right track, but there still needs to be a little bit of time.
Great. So appreciating staff and letting you look under the hood, and I think I can speak for staff in saying they appreciate you giving them the space here to get stabilized, to get organized and do what they need to do in order to get out of this where you're at right now to the next level. I didn't mean to interrupt, Councilmember Davis.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Deanna, I know that's I think what happened was we had city managers, and now we have another city manager who's only, how old are you now? 5 months old? 4 months old? Okay. So it's going to take time, but I think that this process was a major accomplishment for us because we never had this before. Mm-hmm. We never took that 30,000 foot level before. We always just threw things out, and we had no idea how much time staff was needed, or just budgetary requirements and getting things done the way they needed to be. So yeah, we had a wish list and we had things, but we never really took into consideration when we had these that we needed to be a little bit more strategic in what we were doing. So you've offered that to us. So and you guys, I know, worked really hard to get this put together. And Jennifer, yes, you did a heck of a job binding this up. But going forward, I think we need to have a baseline on deliverables. When are you really going to be able to do this? How are you going to do this? I know because you're new. So, I mean, not new, but I mean, you have to get into the, the weeds and get back to us. What is measurable? What isn't measurable? Where are we going to go? You said over and over, you're not going to work in a deficit budget. And that's a good thing because I think we've done that in the past people. Council members, and so we need to be realistic about what we're doing and where it's going to come from. I think in one of our study sessions somewhere along the line, we were asked what we thought revenue streams would be appropriate to come into our city. Okay, so like I threw some stuff out there. I just said, okay, we'll increase my TOT. I mean, like, we don't know what is out there. We don't know, now that we know what's under the hood, it's a lot easier to make a policy decision. So I really appreciate this study session. I think the people in the community, we saw in a few emails, they were very happy. They were sending things and telling us what they thought priorities should be and their deliverables, what they want. Our community has always been well taken care of. They're spoiled, and we love that. But at the same time, we're coming into reality. And there's just so much on the horizon that we have to give leniency to a city run management versus top high telling you this is how it's going to roll. Great. So we have to be realistic about this, but thank you. Just thank you all, because I know this was hard and it's Saturday and we want to go home. Yeah. So anyway, but thank you, Deanna, and everyone.
Great.
I just want to expand a little bit on what the mayor said. We, the council, tend to get our little pet projects and want to have them addressed. But in the interest of allowing the staff to have more staff time to do the work that we've seen outlined here, I'm wondering if the council should look at some of our committee assignments, whether we could combine committees so there'd be fewer meetings for the staff to support, or maybe disband some committees altogether until some of these achievables that we've seen from the staff could be accomplished. Because I think we need to look at essentials, not extravagances, and some of our committees are a little extravagant, I think, and not as productive as the staff would be if they were given the opportunity to do their work. Mm-hmm. So it's just something for the council to consider, and I'm sure you can come up with some ideas of what should be done. Thank you.
I've actually brought humor to this because if you're in a financial services profession, chasing paper is a good thing, right? You're chasing money. I feel like I'm chasing paper here, and that when I entered the organization, we are always running after our next agenda packet, whether it's a commission packet, a committee packet, or a council or board packet. And you finish one, for instance, on a Tuesday night, we finish that meeting, and that Wednesday we go into production for the next meeting. And then those are just the council or board meetings. That doesn't count the 3 or 4 commission or committee meetings that are occurring during the same week. And everything flows through the attorney's office or through the manager's office, and certainly through the clerk's office. And that is how we use the majority of our capacity, is chasing those papers in the packets that follow. I think that would be, it's one of the reasons why we showed the % increases, because while I do favor the government transparency, we also have to test the value add as to where we're going with things. I've actually seen us have to make up items for sake of not being ready on the longer term agenda items, but to still convene the meeting. And I think that's where we need to have our conversations going forward.
You know, there was a PowerPoint slide that we saw yesterday that showed how the city council meetings have grown, how the committee meetings, and it showed which committee met how many times. I think some of that work is getting a little out of hand, and we need to get back to the basics of delivering our city services. Those might be done away with or combined or something.
Great. I actually had that on my list of questions on council governance and committee structure. And so I'm not sure if now is the time to have that conversation, or what would be the right venue for that. Do we have a sense of that?
We should probably talk about it now, since we're talking about it now.
Great.
The council committees, a lot of the items, and some committees are absolutely necessary, especially when we have joint committees with other agencies. Mm-hmm. Like we have the City School Liaison Committee. In fact, Councilmember O'Neill and I talked about maybe recommending, instead of meeting every month, we meet every other month. But we have a tremendous amount of items. But we found in the last meeting or two, we're starting to repeat some things, and
okay.
And that's very highly intensive for both the school district and the city. But it's helpful, and we've had a lot of really good action has come from that. Mm-hmm. So it's a real productive committee. But we talked about maybe recommending meeting every other month instead of every month, unless, of course, anytime there's an emergency. But I think we should look at our committee structure and see, a lot of these items have to go to the full council at the council meetings, mm-hmm. and that might be the best place for some of the items.
Right.
In other cases, the committee structure works really well. So.
Good.
Maybe we just take another look at
mm-hmm.
how they're doing, and if we're keeping them meeting less frequently, like
right.
how productive are they?
Right.
And what couldn't just go straight to the full council at a public meeting?
Good. So two options on the table: reduce the number of meetings, and then take a careful review of the agenda items. Does the committee need to handle those, or could they go forward? So let's make sure we capture those as two options. And I know over lunch you were mentioning there might be some consolidation of committees as well as another opportunity. Yes.
And another thought is some organizations they, because I know in the governance committee, we've looked at, like, we started a conversation as to what items need to be consent, what need to come at all, and we started working on that. And then, once again, resource constraints, but in some organizations, you might have a number of items that most of the work and the public hearing and the discussion goes on in the committee meeting, and then the committee makes some recommendation, and in most of the time it goes on consent when it goes to the full body.
Right.
So that might be something also to think about. If there is a discussion, is it something that a committee could make a recommendation, and then maybe perhaps it doesn't have to be a full agenda item, but that just toss that out as perhaps something we could talk about.
Good.
It's going to be heard one place, it doesn't have to be heard as much in the other place.
Good. Excellent. Other thoughts? Is there a sense that this is an opportunity in terms of rethinking the governance structure? And I know you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, because I did want to say that after participating in many goal-setting sessions of different configurations, this has by far and away been the best. I have to compliment staff and our city manager and our facilitator. It's been highly informative. It's been very effective and productive. The work plan is ambitious, but I think it is achievable. And I think leaving it open-ended, knowing that it's an ongoing process, that this is a multi-year process, is okay. I don't need to have measurements and say, you got to hit this target by December, because then if you don't, there's ill feelings. Oh, we didn't make it. There's a sense of failure, and there shouldn't be that built into this. There should be every opportunity to just build on successes. And it's just going to be a matter of pacing and prioritizing. But it's also, through this session over the last 2 days, I think the council has established the leadership and given the staff and our city manager the direction it needs to say, yes, this is what we concur are important priorities, they're important goals, this is what we want to achieve. So now we have to step back, and now the council as a whole has to give its full support to the staff. So when new things arise, I think we have to consider and weigh very carefully if we add to this work plan. Is it really important? Should it supersede, or should it take the place of, or add to the work? Do we really need to do something that's new? Because this is pretty comprehensive. But as has been pointed out, new things do arise. So but we should consider carefully if we add to this. And we also need to start working as a team. This council needs to work together. We need to open channels of communication. We need to be able to talk, all of us, one to the other. I know when we're talking about committees, there are constraints because I think the mayor feels like she can't place some people in combination with others because of past things that have happened. We need to get past that. We need to break down all of these stone walls that exist among council and really open communication channels. Because if we can't talk, all of us, all 7, one to the other, and really operate as a team, as a whole, it's going to make our staff's jobs that much more difficult. And I know that Deanna has put into the reports that team building and consensus building and trust is important. I think a lot of trust has already been rebuilt among our staff, but we as a council need to work on our council trust now.
I need to comment because I don't recommend people for committees based upon who gets along with who, so I don't agree with that at all. And I actually think the council works very well together. I think that the council, we're not always going to agree on issues. You'll have 5-2 votes, 6-1 votes, and that I think is healthy. But I think for the most part, the majority of the council works very well together. And if you've ever served on any board or commission or committee, you're not going to find everybody in agreement with people all the time. I don't even think that's a good use of a board or committee or commission. So I actually think our council does very well and works well together, and we have accomplished some amazing things. So,
Madam Mayor, I must comment. When you're finished, I must comment.
When I'm finished, thank you. So I just wanted to say, committee assignments are usually by seniority, and other things. They're not based at all upon who gets along with who. I needed to make that clear because that is completely
And here's
not
my
true.
perception. I am on no committees with Ms. Davis, Ms. Watanabe. They have not talked to me since the campaign, literally. Ms. Watanabe won't stand next to me when we take a group photo. This is the reality of our communication patterns. I have never had an office visit with our mayor. She's never asked me what committees I want to be on, and the one time I asked to be on a committee, she wouldn't give it to me. So it's nice to say we're all getting along, we're all professionals, and we do conduct ourselves professionally and civilly, but the real communication is not there.
I need to say, Councilmember Mahan, you may need to look at a mirror a little bit because none of that is true, and I do believe the council gets along well, and that's all I'm going to say on the issue. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I think things would work much better amongst us if you would all just agree with me on every single issue.
There you go.
And
Okay.
so going
Yes.
forward, that should be the bedrock idea, to just all agree with me.
Because you are the world's nicest councilman. We know that.
Okay.
Okay, Pat. Good idea.
Very good. I'm
Thank you.
going to make just one general comment to what I just heard here, and that is, you are a council, you are a board. There should be disagreement. That is part of the democratic process. From a communication perspective, for me, the big question is, how do you disagree? That becomes the question. Disagreement is built in. There's ways of disagreeing that are polarizing, that are adversarial, that are not productive, and there's ways of disagreeing that actually are productive, that can build relationships and build trust, and most importantly, can create creativity, innovation when we can bridge our differences productively. So I just want to throw that point out there as a kind of a conflict framework of how you manage differences. And if I could help in any way, shape, or form, I would make myself available if in any way, shape, or form I can be helpful.
Thank you.
As we move forward here, I would like to direct our attention to staff recommendations 1, 2, and 3. So let's take us back to yesterday on the budget presentation that we heard from the city manager and from your director, your finance director. And so item number 1 is adopt budget principles. So you have the tab in your packet, I believe it's the second tab, the budget principles. And council, have you seen these budget principles?
Probably not, no.
Okay, so these
Are they based on the old budget principles we had? Have they been
Slightly
added
edited.
to?
They're based on last year's
They're very
budget
similar.
principles with some edits.
Okay,
With
so
some added information.
with some, so very similar with a couple
Okay.
little additions and edits and tweaks and so forth. Anything particular jump out, Deanna, Walter? Let's see.
Oh, is there a slide of the
Day
budget
one.
principles?
We had them on day 1. So what we did in the on the budget principles is we took a focus on longer term investments, and that when the council is deliberating on budget items, that we look at them, how they flow out on a longer term. I'm waiting for the slide to come up. There's this.
That's a lot. Do we have to memorize these? Okay.
You don't have to memorize them, but since we launched the budget process this week, these are the principles that we would like to work from.
Okay.
One, it integrates the code of ethics and values as our fiscal responsibility. The second one is the budget decisions within long-term implications. So we look at one-time dollars as one-time use, ongoing dollars for ongoing uses. Trying to remember where else we made some adjustments to. We added some additional language with one-time unrestricted revenues, that we invest those into one-time expenditures. We maintain the adopted budget expenditure percentages and policy levels.
City manager, since
We changed the fund. We mentioned it earlier. The working capital reserve.
The name.
We changed that to general fund budget stabilization, so that we avoid capital fund versus working capital.
got an email on that, I remember.
City manager, it says we're gonna take into account using data from the 10-year financial plan. Is the fact that we haven't approved the 10-year financial plan, is it when approved?
Yes.
Okay.
So we want to work as we prepare the budget with that 10-year in mind. You
Okay,
will
good.
receive the proposed budget, and you will finally approve the 10-year, and then we will begin to live the 10-year as we make additional budget changes.
Oh, Ryan.
No, I just want to make a comment on one of these bullets, and that's on the bullet that talks about establishing fees to go to full cost recovery. If you go there with a certain fee, it's like the fifth one from the bottom, with limited exceptions, established fees based on full cost recovery. If you establish a program that has full, like 100% cost recovery, so the program is basically funded by all the fee payers. I just wanted to caution you, because we have these occasional one-off situations where people come to us, directly to you to waive fees. If you have a full cost recovery program and you waive the fee, you're shortchanging the fund to provide that service, and that the effect of that could be to offload the cost of that waiver onto the other fee payers, which I don't think you really can do. So I think if you want to go to full cost recovery, I think you have to keep in mind that if you do a fee waiver, you're going to have to probably find general fund money to do that.
I want to comment on that. So part of the interest on this bullet is, as the city attorney just spoke to, and we actually left a message for Angie this week on, I think with the interest, the community interest in its desire to put events on and really take risks into the positive of investing in the community, the council should consider a fee waiver fund, a one-time where you manage those fee waivers. Under the law, I'm not authorized to waive fees, but you are. And if to the extent that you have a fund set aside, you can draw down from it. And there's a policy that would need to accompany that so that when you are presented with these situations, you can make those decisions. But the other part is, to the extent that we are not fee recovery, it's important for the council to understand why we may not be fully fund recovering on these services, and that you are mindful in your budget forecast as to why, and you make those informed policy decisions. Examples could be a reading program for youth, where you want to encourage youth to participate, but maybe not everyone can pay for it. The council can make a decision to subsidize the program. And in fact, many cities, and there's a high level of subsidization here, but we should be transparent around that so you are fully informed in your budget decisions.
So library services, parks, sometimes parks programs,
Right.
senior services,
Yes.
those types of things. Didn't we do that just recently? We didn't waive a fund, but we agreed to pay. I'm just recalling this discussion at one of our council meetings that we're not waiving, but we're supporting it with another
Fund. I don't have
fund.
that memory.
Anyways, I'm maybe not recalling it properly.
So Deanna, I think what Ryan is kind of speaking more to is we've waived some fees for planning when we've had a community development project, or an individual came and said, can you help me out? And I know we've done that in the past. So is there legally, can we put aside and have a fund for something like that? I mean, if that comes up, or is that a little crazy?
Councilmember, did you say waiving fees for developers?
No, not developers. It was
You meant
there was a use,
nonprofit
yeah,
or-
nonprofits, or no, there was somebody that we gave them a break on something.
Well, it was the
SES hall.
SES.
There were things. Yeah.
So this would be where the council would want to sponsor, if it's a build out of a program, or enter into agreement for a sponsorship opportunity.
Sponsorship.
We would
Sponsorship,
need a
yeah,
funding.
that's what I-
We would
okay.
need a funding source so that we
Okay.
can draw down from, and it's done very transparently. But there's oftentimes, as the city attorney suggested, that there's just inquiries as to whether I can waive fees or not. And I want to be able to work with the council on a policy so that when I say, no, I can't, but here's a solution, if the council is willing to consider it.
Okay.
Okay, other questions about the principles?
So one other item that we added is, as we go forward is, as I mentioned earlier, we need to work with our community and we need to work with our employees, just looking at our 10-year fiscal outlook. And second bullet from the bottom is engage employees to contribute in new and innovative ideas during the department budget development process. We need them. They have served this organization well with solving some critical problems. And we think it should be part of your budget principles and acknowledging the work that they do. Expanding existing revenue sources, I mentioned yesterday in response to Councilmember Colstead's question, I would love to walk out of here with a revenue opportunities direction. I think it's critical to accomplish over the next 2 years and bring back solutions for the council. Focus on business process redesign. We spent a lot of time on that, mostly when we talked about IT, but there are some processes here that we need to redesign and be more efficient. I'd like to start bringing back to council ideas that we could immediately get in front of you to authorize us to just do it. One example is there's a great donation on our agenda next Tuesday, but however, the cost benefit of producing the report and the agenda item, when balanced out against the actual amount of the donation, it teeters on that way. So those are things that we need to just say, let us do some things that from a cost benefit perspective allow for us to be more quickly and save costs.
Other questions at all about the principles? Adopt the principles, council?
Yes.
I'm seeing,
Yeah.
good,
Yes.
good. Lots of nods around the table.
Yes,
Excellent,
yes.
very good. We move on to staff recommendation number 2, direct staff to initiate a revenue opportunities and expenditure growth management efforts to stabilize the 10-year financial plan. So I'm looking around, and if you need.
What does that look like when
Yeah.
you talk about initiating revenue opportunities study? Is it a study? Is that where you're going to come back with us with a group of potential revenue opportunities above and beyond the ones we already have? Is that, how does that look? Tell us how it looks.
So I'd like to look at already what has come up is issues around our fees and where there's opportunities to increase some fees that might be development related mostly. Look at some of our taxes and whether like TOT, whether it's a modern tax and other areas that we could go into, or community benefit programs, as we talked about earlier with respect to the impact of development on our operations, and bringing back ideas for the council to further inform as how we go forward. And working with our employees to see where they see ideas that might strengthen our revenues and build up against our deficit. So this is more working with our community, working with our employees, and already teasing out some of the ideas that have been presented over the last 2 days.
Okay.
Good.
I also want to express there's, this isn't a revenue opportunities, but I've said this before, looking at how we charge internally. So I want to go through and see at the grant, but this is capacity, right, that we need to work on. Looking at what is being charged to the general fund and whether there are other qualifying funds within the organization that we can transfer those costs. I had mentioned at one point earlier, a couple weeks ago, that off the bat, I can already figure out maybe $3 to $4 million of some transfers that we can make on a one-time basis that it could help us for year 2, but I would need your consideration of it. It has to do with land acquisition and drawing down from the general fund when we could have used our housing fund to cover those costs, and wanting to work with the council on those types of transfers internally so that we free up the burdens on our general fund.
I would imagine you look at internal and external forces. Yes. And I actually think contract management and property management is also a revenue generator for the city. So, I mean, there's different ways of, generating revenue by, even proper management. So.
Good. Other questions about this item, the 10-year financial plan? So I did see nods in terms of approving staff and the city manager to go forward. And the third one, number 3, support and approve transition to a 2-year budget development process, and then the specifics beginning when, where, and aligned to what. So maybe just speak just a couple, what's this about?
So one is making longer term decisions, understanding the decisions over a 2-year horizon, and also bringing back an operating budget that shows the level of investment in each of those strategic pillars. So going through the organization and understanding what functions support these items, so that as we continue to build some discipline around our more efficient use of resources, we understand where investments are made and where we need to do more work.
Council, questions about that? Are we okay? Is that okay to approve going forward?
And for public transparency, that doesn't mean that you will not see the budget for 2 years. We'll walk away. You will get your monthly reports.
We all planned our vacations for June of 2019.
You will get your monthly reports on our financial status, and every year you will get an update of the operating or capital. But when we make financial decisions, we'll look out over and plan over 2 years with adjustments as needed.
Maybe a midterm,
yes,
look as to how on track we are in the budget.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
great.
we will get to a point where, from a capital investment standpoint, we're also able to align those to the strategic pillars so that we know where the gaps may be or where the funding concentrations are.
Great. Thank you. So the one left hanging item here was the governance, and we started that, and I don't know if we even need to bring closure to that, but there were a couple suggestions in terms of reducing the number of meetings, carefully reviewing the items that could go to full council, consolidating committees. So for next steps on that, does it make sense? And I don't want to commit staff to anything. Is there staff ready to make a proposal in terms of the governance structure? Is that something, and this is all...
I personally think that particular council members, maybe we should all give our input to staff, especially because we're the ones a little bit more familiar on our own committees and how they're functioning and what might be our recommendations as well, and maybe then the staff
can take that, so you can initiate that
and
perfect.
Bring back something.
Or maybe put it on the agenda of each committee, have the committee members say, hey, let's look at the work plan, let's look at the schedule, what can we do to make this more effective?
Good, so let council initiate that and then have, with ideas, and then staff respond to that. That makes a lot of sense.
Because we have a certain amount of public that comes to our committee meetings and may want to weigh in on that as well.
Of course.
Give a drop dead date on that? Like do it by February 15th?
Oh. I'd ask the city manager that, because I'm already in discussion with her on some of my committees and what we can do.
Okay.
So I think that we can just let each committee chair or whatever have that conversation with the city manager.
Let the committees meet and talk about it too.
Right.
So within the next 30 to 60
That's
days.
true.
Okay.
Maybe return the information to the manager by February 15th.
Is that too soon? Does that give you all enough time?
Too soon.
Only because of the meeting schedule of the committees. So
they meet at different times of the month.
yeah, does March 15th? Is that, I'm just throwing out a date here.
That's good.
So we captured that in the notes. Good.
We'll give our information, our feedback to you.
Yes, and if you know off the bat that you don't need a meeting to make these decisions, I'm just mindful that February and March we are preparing for the Stadium Authority budget, some key sessions that are on the pending list, and if we don't have to have a meeting for that meeting's sake, perhaps we can also accomplish it offline.
Right.
Good. Excellent. Very good. Before we move to public comment, and we're ahead of schedule, which is all good, anything else before we move to public comment? Anything from what we've just talked about or any new items? I just want to not leave anything unspoken here. Let's move to public comment then, and I know we're ahead of schedule, but it looks like we're going to break earlier than our 3 o'clock close today. So if any member of the public would like to speak, now's a great time.
I don't have any cards, so if anyone, please come forward. Please come forward.
I'll be happy to introduce myself. My name's Art Javaris. I live in Santa Clara on Main Street with my wife, Betty. I think most of you are aware of that. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to address the council, and I'd like to say I'm very optimistic moving forward with our new city manager. This is the first opportunity I've had a chance to listen to her, and I'm very impressed. So thank you for joining Santa Clara. My main concern today is traffic in the context of development. And I was talking with others. I noticed that El Camino is being developed and as a main business residential corridor. And my concern is the traffic, and if there's any studies being done to make sure the traffic stays on that main corridor and does not infiltrate our beautiful neighborhoods. I know there are fees charged to developers, and I'm wondering, do we have fees that we could collect from those projects and somehow tie into projects to prevent traffic from infiltrating through our neighborhoods, such as using those fees perhaps for roundabouts or choker curves or anything that would preclude traffic from wanting to come off of those main corridors through our beautiful neighborhoods. So that's my concern. Can anyone tell me if that's been addressed?
We'll go through the we'll go through the rest of the public comment, and then maybe we can have our staff answer any of the questions.
Okay.
Because what you just mentioned, Art, is happening all over town.
Right.
And it's all over the Bay Area and with Waze and other of those. And so
yeah, and I was just wondering if that's something that's incorporated into a larger plan.
If staff, you're ready
We could
to
continue
answer.
to take the public comments, but I would ask Manuel or Alan just to spend a little bit of time with you to explain the transportation fees.
Okay, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much, and once again, good luck. Thank you.
Let's see if there's any other public comment, and then we'll see if we can get something. Any other public comment? Please come forward.
Almost done, hallelujah. I find it comical the one person who brings up committee assignments isn't on any and doesn't even live in Santa Clara. That's really hypocritical. I hope seriously we're going to stop carrying water for the one school district that we seem to only support, and that's Santa Clara Unified. How can I get a commitment that's going to happen? So I'd like that question answered. And if not, I'll be happy to invite the other school districts to come and start sucking off the same tit that these ones are all sucking off of. Because we have more than one school district in our city, and honestly, I'm sick and tired of supporting that one school district. And I'm ready to escalate that to lots of levels because I think we've done enough. Stop carrying their water. We give them a lot. We have a committee that meets with them. We give them lots of money. We have to stop it. So unless you want 4 or 5 more, how do we stop the one we do now? And I'm really serious. I think we have to stop it. They have separate agencies, they have separate boards, they have separate money. Just because you've served on them or you got kids in it, it's wrong. And you're misusing public funds. When you're going to be doing the Stadium Authority budget development, I'd like to know when those are, because as a member of the public, I want to be involved in that budget development. I want to go to those meetings. You keep talking about meetings. Don't cut down the committee meetings. That's the only chance we as the public get to know what's going on. It's bad enough we come and donate 2 days of our time. Unlike you, we're not paid to be here. And then we get our 3 minutes. You go to a committee meeting, I don't even think you should have a time limit. You're taking time out of your day as a member of the public. How else are you supposed to get the information? Because you don't get answers. And I think that's really a bad way to interface with your public. If you have nothing to hide, you should be hiding nothing. Why is it that the public doesn't get answers? What are you all hiding from? Just open up. Tell us what we need to know. Yeah, I'm up here a lot. I got a lot I'd rather be home doing. This is not my idea of fun. It really isn't. It breaks my heart I have to be here. It really, really does. I really thank you for the opportunity of being here. But can't we fix it? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Sam Hagag here. I guess this is our last chance for public comment. So I wanted to use the opportunity to say what a wonderful goal-setting session this has been. I honestly expected a lot more fireworks, but it has been pretty good. And I was hoping to see you guys line up on the wall like you did last year because that was really fun. I see you guys. And again, congratulations to our new staff. You guys are doing an amazing job. And again, thank you for facilitating. This is way more, I think, useful and informative and beneficial than what we've seen in the past. So congratulations and thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Hassan. Anyone else? All right. City Manager, did you want to answer the question or talk about the traffic going through neighborhoods? Are you connecting our management team
We were
with
just going to connect
with Art?
Staff to, in fact, Alan is going back now.
Okay, thank you. And just to answer Debbie, I have reached out to Cupertino School District. We're not using public funds illegally for Santa Clara Unified School District. And we gave 6 opportunities in these last 2 days for our public to give us some input. So I'm very pleased with that. And we did get a lot of good input. And thank you all for coming and giving us your public input. We appreciate that. Okay.
Mayor, I just want to close with thanking the City Council for the hard work that you all did in the 2 days. It's incredible, the level of support, the valuable input, and your willingness to sit and listen is extremely important to staff as we go forward. I again want to thank the executive leadership team for pulling these documents together. They were very high quality and it matches the service and the commitment that they have to the organization. Always want to call a special call out for Jennifer, who just works around the clock to do all that she's committed to doing and to make sure that it works seamlessly. And I also want to thank our team today, Michael, Liaf, Tu, and Dong, for their production and making sure that we're transparent by live streaming. And also thank Lisa, Augie, Megan, and Liz for having the convention center ready to go for us with all the services that we need to have a productive meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. It has taken a village to produce this event for our public, and I have to say on behalf of the council, you all work so hard to put this together that you've really brought us to the next level. That's a wonderful thing for the community and for the council to give us this snapshot of where we are and where we're going. At least we can see into the future now as to what's going to happen to us. The bad part about all this is you've set the bar really high for us, so we can't wait to see what's coming forward in the future. So thank you so much, and thank you to our moderator, Shawn, as well. I think you did a fabulous job and keeping us on board. Thank you. So
I think we're closed.
That's it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.